I am the new heir to this company. Those words didn't just enter the Peterson Holdings boardroom. They exploded across it, louder than thunder on a clear day. Every head turned at once, all eyes fixated on the source of the impossible claim. A 16-year-old girl, black, wearing worn sneakers and carrying a faded backpack, stood at the door. Her presence alone seemed to defy every expectation. At the head of the mahogany table, Richard Peterson, the billionaire CEO, laughed a laugh so sharp, so loud it made the crystals on the chandelier tremble. "You girl, you shouldn't even be on this floor," he said, wiping a tear from the force of his laughter. Alexis Williams didn't flinch. Her gaze swept over the board executives in suits more expensive than most people's yearly rent, all white, all male. But her posture carried a calm authority that belied her age. "My name is Alexis Williams," she repeated, voice firm, cutting through the laughter like a knife. "And I have come to claim my rightful inheritance." The CFO, James Crawford, muttered something to a colleague. Alexis noticed. She smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 6 months ago, she was living a completely different life. The daughter of a cleaning lady, raised by her grandmother, her father a mystery. She never imagined discovering that she was Thomas Peterson's daughter, the co-founder of Peterson Holdings, or that she would one day stand in the very boardroom that had excluded her family. Richard stood towering over her. "Listen here, girl. I don't know what game you're playing, but get out before I call security." Calmly, Alexis opened her backpack and produced a yellowed folder. "Before you do that, you might want to take a look at this." The boardroom erupted in murmurs as Alexis laid the documents on the table. DNA tests, a birth certificate, Thomas Peterson's will. Richard's laughter faltered as he picked up the papers. Color drained from his face. "Impossible," he muttered, his hands trembling ever so slightly. "Thomas never told me about a daughter." Alexis tilted her head, feigning surprise. "How strange," she said softly. "Because he made it very clear in his will that if anything happened to him, I should receive my share of the company at 16. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the ticking of the Swiss clock on the wall. Alexis scanned the room, noting every flicker of panic, every twitch of disbelief. James Crawford cleared his throat nervously. "Even if the documents are real, a minor cannot assume an inheritance without legal representation." Alexis interrupted, calm, poised. "And it just so happens I already have that taken care of." Richard clenched his fists, fury visible across his face. "You think you can just show up here out of nowhere?" Out of nowhere, Alexis smiled again, but this smile carried a dangerous precision. "Mr. Peterson, I've been preparing for this moment for months." Every executive was stunned. Shock, contempt, disbelief, they all struggled to contain it. But Alexis stood unmoved, serene, the calm of someone who had faced far worse storms and survived. She was ready. Richard Peterson's face twisted in anger and disbelief as Alexis laid out her proof. The folder contained DNA tests, her birth certificate, and Alexis's smile didn't falter. "My background?" she asked softly, tilting her head. "Do you mean that I'm black, poor, or both?" Crawford stammered. You didn't have to say it," Alexis interrupted calmly. "It was written all over your faces the moment I walked in here." Richard slammed the documents on the table. "Even if Thomas is your father, you can't just waltz in here and demand control." 14 years, Alexis corrected softly. "He died when I was 2. Her calm correction only fueled his frustration. He strode to the panoramic windows, fists clenched, jaw tight. "You don't understand what it takes to run a company like this." Gasps filled the room. James Crawford coughed, choking back air. How did this teenager know confidential details that barely circulated in the executive corridors? Alexis didn't pause. "And Thomas didn't just die in an accident, as you always claimed. He was on his way to pick me up from daycare. He had been coming every Tuesday and Thursday since my mother died. I found photos, witnesses, people who remember him. You can't erase history." Richard turned pale, but Alexis continued relentlessly. "You thought burying Thomas's secrets would hide your crimes. But I've done my homework. I tracked documents, employees, and financial irregularities for months. Everything points to a deliberate cover-up. Before anyone could speak, the office door opened. Margaret Collins entered, elegant, confident, every step measured. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, voice cutting through the tension like silk. I'm Margaret Collins, former VP of Operations. I worked with Thomas Peterson for 8 years. Alexis contacted me 2 months ago, and I've been helping her prepare. Richard froze. Margaret Collins, the brilliant executive he had forced out years ago, was standing beside his enemy. Her presence shifted the room. Alexis was no longer a lone teenager. She had an ally who knew every secret of Peterson Holdings. Margaret placed a small audio device on the table. Thomas called me the night of the accident. He discovered financial irregularities and intended to confront someone at the office before picking up Alexis. He never made it. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Richard's face drained of color. Alexis leaned forward. For months, I've gathered evidence, connected dots, and uncovered truths you thought were buried. You underestimated me because of my age, my appearance, my background. That was your first mistake. The boardroom held its collective breath. Alexis's calm, unwavering presence radiated power, the kind of authority that comes not from a title, but from preparation and intelligence. And since you all seem so confident, she said, her voice low and precise, let me explain why my birth certificate disappeared after Thomas's death. Documents, records, even hospital files lost or tampered with. Convenient, isn't it? Always on Friday afternoons when fewer people are around. And every time, a company you control, Richard, was involved in archiving and consulting contracts. Richard's laugh died in his throat. James Crawford loosened his tie, sweating, and Michael Torres stared at the door, calculating escape. Margaret's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Alexis had set a trap that no one saw coming. And then there's Robert Davidson, she said, consulting her tablet. Senior accountant, Thomas's right hand, dismissed after the funeral, but I found him. He kept copies of all financial records, 10 years of doctored reports, false invoices, and money laundering. 23,000 siphoned through shell companies. Through. Crawford gasped. Impossible. Alexis smiled. Not impossible, just underestimated. Richard made a last desperate attempt. Even if it's true, you're a minor. You can't. Alexis cut him off. I can, with proper legal guidance. I can launch a full forensic audit, file federal criminal complaints, and go public with everything I've collected. Every recording, every document. And yes, she paused, letting the weight sink in. Today's conversation is being broadcast live. The room froze. The executives stared at Alexis, pale and paralyzed. Margaret opened her laptop. On the screen, the live stream displayed tens of thousands watching, the numbers climbing by the second. Every word Richard had said, every insult, every lie, it was all being documented, all being shared. 3 federal agents and 2 local detectives entered. Alexis Williams approached us 2 weeks ago with evidence of corporate fraud, said Agent Sarah Martinez. We have arrest warrants for Richard Peterson, James Crawford, and Michael Torres. The boardroom erupted. James tried to flee, only to be handcuffed mid-step. Michael Torres slumped into his chair, tears streaming silently. Richard's face turned red, then white, as reality crashed around him. Alexis's calm never wavered. In a few minutes, federal administrators will take control of the company. Your accounts are frozen, and the video of your racist live comments, millions have seen it. She opened her backpack one final time, producing a tablet with a recording. Richard Peterson, clearly instructing Davidson on covering illegal transfers 3 years ago, played in crystal clear audio. Every lie, every crime, every cover-up was now undeniable. Richard's voice quavered. You don't know who you're messing with. Alexis looked at him, eyes cold and sharp. Yes, I do. And now justice will be served, Margaret smiled. Shall we reveal the final piece? Alexis nodded. The will, Richard. Your plan failed. Thomas's trust fund gives me 51% of the company. I am now the controlling owner of Peterson Holdings. Shock. Silence. Richard couldn't comprehend it. 51%, he whispered. And my first decision, Alexis continued, voice firm, is to fire you all for fraud, recover stolen money, and ensure the company is rebuilt on integrity and fairness. The executives were escorted out. Alexis looked out the panoramic window, calm, collected, victorious. But Alexis knew this was only the beginning. The real change, the legacy of her father, Thomas Peterson, was about to unfold. And nothing, not the most corrupt, could stop her now. The echoes of handcuffs and sirens faded, leaving the boardroom in stunned silence. Richard Peterson, James Crawford, and Michael Torres were gone, their empire exposed and dismantled. But Alexis Williams didn't celebrate with fanfare. She didn't need to. She had already won. Her victory wasn't in their humiliation. It was in the foundation she was about to build for the future. Margaret Collins, sitting beside her, gave a small approving nod. "It's done," she said softly. "Now we rebuild." Alexis gazed out of the panoramic window, her eyes tracing the skyline of a city that had always seemed out of reach. "It's time," she said quietly. "Time to honor my father's vision and make sure no one ever exploits people like us again." Within days, Peterson Holdings was renamed Williams Peterson Corporation. Alexis, though legally still a minor, had full control over strategic decisions, with Margaret Collins as CEO. Together, they began a transformation the company had never seen. Ethical practices replaced corruption. Diversity initiatives became a core focus. Community programs were launched to support underserved neighborhoods, the very communities Richard had ignored for decades. The first major meeting with investors was a revelation. Where fear and skepticism once ruled, now there was excitement. The company had recovered the stolen $400,000, but that was only the beginning. Tripled profits, unprecedented community engagement, and a transparent, ethical corporate culture became the hallmark of Alexis's leadership. Richard Peterson's downfall was complete. His racist live-stream comments had gone viral, viewed by millions worldwide. His wealth frozen, his influence destroyed. He became a cautionary tale. Intelligence, preparation, and integrity always triumph over arrogance and greed. James Crawford lost his home, his family, and declared bankruptcy. Michael Torres was reduced to a sales job, his career erased. Alexis's victory wasn't just personal, it was systemic. She had not only claimed what was rightfully hers, but had rewritten the rules of the corporate game itself. She introduced programs to hire and mentor young people from underrepresented communities, college scholarships, job training internships. The new Williams Peterson Corporation became a launchpad for talent that had been historically overlooked. Her phone buzzed with a message from Robert Davidson, the former accountant, who had been key to exposing the truth. "Finished law school," it read. "Thanks to you and the foundation, ready for the next challenge." Alexis smiled. Every person who had helped her, every ally she had recruited, every plan she had executed meticulously, it was all coming together. The world could see what she already knew. Justice, courage, and intelligence always prevail. Months later, Alexis visited the site of the old offices. Where abandoned buildings had once stood, children now played in a park funded by Williams Peterson Corporation. Laughter filled the air, a sound Alexis had never imagined would be associated with the place where her father's legacy had been threatened. Margaret joined her, watching the children run and play. "You've done more than reclaim a company," she said. "You've changed lives," Alexis nodded, her eyes steady, confident. "That was the real goal," she said. "Not revenge, not humiliation. Transformation, and transformation it was. By combining strategic intelligence, meticulous research, and a fearless willingness to confront injustice, Alexis Williams became more than just a CEO. She became a symbol. The girl who walked into a boardroom underestimated by everyone, who saw the cracks in a corrupt empire, and who rebuilt it with vision, courage, and integrity. Her father, Thomas Peterson, could finally rest in peace. The company he co-founded, once threatened by greed and deception, was now a beacon of fairness and opportunity. Alexis's story spread beyond corporate circles, news outlets, social media, and countless viewers marveled at her intelligence, bravery, and moral clarity. In the end, the real victory was not measured in dollars, arrests, or public humiliation. It was measured in justice served, lives changed, and a legacy restored. Alexis Williams had turned the impossible into reality. A teenage girl, underestimated, dismissed, and mocked, had rewritten the rules, proving a simple but powerful truth. Preparation, courage, and intelligence are unstoppable forces. As she looked out the window one final time, Alexis knew this was only the beginning. The world was full of injustice, corruption, and people who underestimated others. But she had learned how to turn every obstacle into an opportunity. And she would continue to do so, one calculated, courageous step at a time. For those watching her story unfold, one message was clear. Never underestimate someone based on their age, race, or background. Underestimating someone like Alexis Williams is not only morally wrong, it's strategically fatal. The teenager with a faded backpack had grown into a woman who would forever change the landscape of corporate power, justice, and opportunity. And the best part? She had done it with integrity, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. Her final thought whispered to herself as the sun set over the city, "The real revenge isn't destroying your enemies. The real revenge is building something they never thought possible."